everybody, I'm Mike DiLisio.
I'm Camilla Cleghorn.
I'm Tom Vasel.
And I'm Roy Cannaday.
Today we're going to be taking a look at Mythic Mischief, a game with a magical theme where you're playing as mischievous students in a magical library. Lots of magic.
You are using that word a lot.
It's very magical.
Mucho magic.
I like that. Mucho magic.
I've been using Duolingo.
What's that?
I've been doing Duolingo.
Oh, muy bien. Let's head over to the table. I'll give you a quick overview on how the game plays, and then we'll come back here and let you know what we think. All right, here we see a setup for a two-player game of Mythic Mischief. There are different kinds of modes you can play as. You can have team modes. There's a solo mode, but this is essentially the basic head-to-head mode of the game. In this particular example, I'm showing you Frankenstein's monsters playing off against the wizards, but there are two other factions that come in the base box. You've got the zombies and you've got the vampires, and they have their own figures and tokens that are specific to their factions. It is a lightly asymmetric game in the sense that while there are some standard actions that every faction will have, like moving and distracting, there are some different ways of doing other actions that I'll talk about in a moment. And then each faction has a special power that is very unique to them and an after-school special, which is unique to them as well. Again, I'll show that here in just a minute. The setup for the game is basically just determined by this before lunch card. It shows you where the locations that the tome master is going to be going for, where the starting tomes begin, and here it is. Here's that in action. So the way the game works is that you are trying to get your opponents in the path of the Tomekeeper, because you're not supposed to be in this magical library reading these sacred magical books. The Tomekeeper is there to keep you and catch you from doing that. So what you're trying to do is basically manipulate the other players in such a way that they get captured by the Tomekeeper. The Tomekeeper is going to move in a relatively prescribed manner towards their next location. And so if you look at these tokens here, there are three of them: 1, 2, and 3. And again, that was just determined by this card here. We know that the Tomekeeper is going to move 4 spaces towards the next spot. So I know as a player, let's say that I'm playing as the monsters here, I know that the Tomekeeper is going to go in this direction, and it's going to go 4 spaces. That's determined here by the card. So 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4. One of those two ways, it's going to end up right here. And so if I'm able to manipulate things in such a way that the other player are in the path of the Tomekeeper, I'm going to get a point. You win the game if you are the first team to get to 10 points, or if you've got more points when the Tomekeeper has reached the third destination after lunch, because you have a before lunch phase and an after lunch phase. As soon as the Tomekeeper gets to the third location, that's going to trigger after lunch. You'll kind of reset the board a little bit, and after it gets to that third spot, if no one has gotten to 10, whoever has the most points there is going to win. So what do you do on your turn? On your turn, you're going to be spending action points. These little dice here are generally not rolled. They're really action point trackers, okay? And so, for example, the wizards here, they also, the monsters start with a base movement of 3. That can be changed throughout the game, and I'll show you how that is. Let's say this is actually set up in such a way that the wizards would be going first. You know that because there's an extra tome out here for the monster. So the wizards can go first. Again, I know that the Tomekeeper is going to end up in this general location, so I don't want to stay here. That's a little too close for comfort for the Tomekeeper. So let's say if I'm moving 3, I want to get as many of these tomes as I can. That was actually a terrible starting place for me, but let's not worry about that right now. So if I move 1, I pick up that tome. If I move 2, I pick up this tome. I wouldn't touch the tome of the other team. And let's say for 3, I'm not going to worry about that. I'll move over here. So these would be pipped down so that I know that I've used up all 3 of my points. The warp ability here allows me to swap places with another figure. So I wouldn't want to do that with either of these, because right now my figure is on one of their tome spaces. If I did a warp, I could swap spaces, and I'm making it easier for them to get one of their tomes, which I don't want to do. But basically, the warp here is a way for me to move other players. Everyone has their own ability, their own way of doing that. The wizards will do like a swap. The monsters have a throw. The vampires have a lure, which basically, can push the other players around. And the zombies have an infect. They're all essentially the same idea. It's just different ways of doing them. The same way that you see the wall movement. So these bookcases effectively act as walls, and they obviously are going to affect a number of things. It might affect where the Tomekeeper moves. It might affect how other players move. Every faction has their own way of doing it. So the wizards have a shift, which means that basically you can choose a bookshelf in a space that's adjacent to you and move it in its same orientation. So if I wanted to shift to this wall, I can shift it there, I could shift it there, all right? Same thing here, I could shift this wall here, I could shift it there if I wanted to. Which honestly I probably would want to do. Like let's say I did that, I shifted this right here, that spends that. Now I know it's gonna go 1, 2, 3, catch that monster, give me a point, okay? The monsters have a barge. They're just different ways of adjusting and moving these things around. You also, again, have a ability that's just for you. The wizards have a teleport. If I wanted to spend this tome, I can move one of my wizards anywhere I want. So really, honestly, what would have been smarter for me to do is instead of moving there, move here, get this tome, and then teleport maybe down here, okay? That way I know I'm not in danger anymore. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to use any or all of your actions up to the amount that you have, and then the Tomekeeper is going to move. So the monsters would have been it would have been unintelligent for them to start there knowing that it's going to go there. But let's say they weren't really paying a whole lot of attention during setup and they placed themselves right there. 1, 2, 3 captures this one. 4, I would get a point. Okay, this monster is going to come back out on the board into one of these locations that are denoted by a circle there. Okay, that's essentially the flow of the game. You're going to take your actions, the Tomekeeper is going to move, and then you have a cleanup phase. Any used dice move as far to the left as possible, and all of this is shown you on this little player aid card. Now you've got these tomes here that you can add to permanently upgrade your abilities. So let's say I want to have a better move value. I can put one here. Now instead of 3, I'm starting with 5 because there are numbers above there. Maybe I want to have a distract, which moves the Tomekeeper towards you. Maybe I want to have even better movement. I can do this. And so now, once you've done that, you put them on the new movement values that they've got there. So now I've got 7 movement. Still nothing there. I've got 1 here. And then you've got what's called a boost, where you can choose any of your action dice and up to 2 spaces move them forward. You can move 1 twice or up to 2 different ones. So let's say I wanted to have more distract. I move that there, and now I've got 2 distract for my next turn. All right? That's how the game works. Take your actions, move the Tomekeeper, do your cleanup. Hopefully, if you've gathered tomes, you can gain better values for the rest of the game. You will do this until it reaches the 3rd spot. After that, you reset with this after lunch phase. The Tomekeeper will move 1 less space. It'll move 3 per movement instead of 4. And you have access to your after lunch abilities. For example, the wizards have these portals. Once a turn, you can place one of these portals under one of your wizards. And now that is treated as an adjacent space for all of your wizards and allies. It allows you to move around the board a little more. The monsters have a trap ability. And all of the factions have something that's unique to them. All right, that's how the game plays. First to 10 points, or whoever's in the lead once the Tomekeeper reaches its final spot after lunch. That is Mythic Mischief. Let's head back over and let you know what we think. All right, well, that was just a brief overview of Mythic Mischief. And let's just start off with the components, because I think that's going to be something that's going to get people's attention right away.
So, clarifying question.
Sure.
This is the only version. Like, is there a standee version? Do they all come with the miniatures? I wasn't sure. Are we dealing with deluxe?
There's technically not just this version. The version that's on the table right now is the one that people saw for the overview. Tom's going to be showing another one. But to be more specific,
Oh wow, it's on the wall there.
It doesn't change the components in that way. It's miniatures in all of them. The quality of the cards and the tokens are the same. The difference is that there are some expansion factions in the deluxe edition, and there's a second board because you can play a different mode where you are kind of two teams facing off.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so it kind of expands the game, doesn't change the components.
Does not change the components. So with that being said, what do we think of the components?
I thought the miniatures and sculpts and things like that were really cool, and I like that there were nice trays for all the stuff. I love the player boards, because dual-layer boards are always awesome. And I like the little tokens that you run around and collect for your library books and things like that to upgrade your stuff.
Your tomes.
Yeah.
It's IV. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Their
right.
production is top tier, from graphic design to my only two small complaints. I thought parts of the rule book were laid out in a weird order. To the point where I was like, where is this? And it felt like I had to find things going back and forth. And the tomes, the thing you just said you liked, I thought they looked like cubes for a really long time.
They're supposed to look like
They
cubes,
need
though.
a wash. They're two little books.
They're books, yeah.
I
Yeah,
want them.
but they're supposed to be cube books. I think they're
Well,
cute.
sure, but I can't tell they're books.
Yeah.
I wish they need a wash. That's
Just
all.
a quick wash.
That's a very minor thing.
I would say that would be my one little thing is with the tomes is I would want them a little bit bigger. I felt like they got lost on the player board. But just a very, I mean, again, we are talking very, very minor complaint. Like I really liked that they fit into the player board and take up that space functionally. I thought they did great. I would want them a little bit bigger to take up a little bit more space in that square on your board.
Yeah, echoing Tom, this company, they've not put out a lot of games, but everyone has had a tremendous production. This continues with that. The one other thing that I would say that I appreciate about the components in this game is that they didn't oversize things.
Right.
Yeah.
Things are playable. It's not like you're going to have trouble finding out what's going on, but it doesn't take up a huge amount of table space. That's including everyone having their own player board, and I appreciate that.
And I think it's very, I love the sculpts to begin with, but I think too, to have things that obstruct the board, such as the library walls and that kind of stuff, they don't get in the way. And I think that's such a fine line that some companies cross, where you want these to be obstructive and you need to see where they block off, but they don't get in the way. I didn't have a problem with them falling over. They were just the right weight, just the right height. Like you could definitely tell they'd been play tested for functionality, but also not losing
That's
that
one
theme.
thing I think Ivy does really well is like they have really deluxe games, but they're not like overwrought.
Right.
It's like they're just solid and hardcore to be able to play the game.
Right.
So that's
That's
kind of
true.
cool.
I wouldn't call it overproduced.
Yeah.
So components, I think we've got that covered. One thing I think might surprise some people that play this for the first time, because it has such a strong theme that it's putting forward, is that this is essentially an abstract game.
For sure.
This is really, in my mind, and I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, a head-to-head abstract game with a really nice theme. How well do you think? You're already questioning me.
I think you're saying it a little confusingly because
Why?
you just said it's an abstract game with a great theme. Then it's not an abstract game if it has a
Right.
great theme.
Okay, well,
You're saying it plays. It's a tactical, strategic game that plays like chess, essentially.
I guess you're right. What I'm asking is that does that theme come through?
Sure, because the zombies are dropping stuff,
Stench.
the vampires are getting hearts, the wizards teleport. I think the theme, I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
I think the theme is pretty strong, actually.
Okay.
But I think people will come into this going, woo-hoo-hoo, magic and mischief. It's called Mythic Mischief.
Right.
And you get in and you're like, oh, my brain just fell apart.
Yes.
I think I'd be on the opposite side of that. I think I would say it is more abstract. I think I agree more with what you were saying, or maybe I just understood it, where it has
didn't
a great
understand,
theme. You didn't understand. If you could try a little
I'm
harder,
hearing this clearly.
Be a little smarter, then you would see that no, it's that it is a great theme and a great setting, and you do have those little abilities. But at the end of the day, you're sitting down and doing a puzzle.
Right.
And it's a head-to-head puzzle, like you said, like chess. And so the theme is there, but you're not thinking about theme like, oh, I'm the vampire, so therefore I need to go over here to get the blood in order to, to make this other person. You don't feel like you're a vampire.
I get into the theme. I play the zombies, and I really get into the theme. I like it.
Really?
Yeah, especially with that, come over here, attracting people, and I don't know. We gotta, yeah.
Well, that
I
kind
do
of
that to
That's
the Lord Keeper.
uncomfortable.
Me and the Lord Keeper.
Tomekeeper. That brings up a question that I was going to ask, which is, this is a game that is slightly asymmetrical.
Asymmetrical.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Easy for me to say. Do you think that comes through? That to me, I think, is where I'm with you. I kind of get into the theme, and where it most comes through is like, oh, I've got this special after lunch ability that I think makes sense for what I do. You know, putting out the teleport tokens, or how well do you think the asymmetry comes through?
I really like the fact that all the different factions have different powers, and like trying to figure out how to play yours off of your opponents, because knowing your power is just as important as knowing your opponent's power. Like figuring out where to set your people up so you're not going to get thrown into the mix of the Tomekeeper or get put in the way, and just trying to keep yourself out of the way just as much as trying to throw them under the bus of the Tomekeeper as well. You know, it's very interesting.
Now, I mean, I like all that. I do think the game suffers from being a game that's hard to teach. I was teaching to some people, and it is like, okay, what are we doing? We're running around and getting cubes. No, you're trying to make the other people get in the path of this dude.
Okay.
That's the whole point of the game.
Yes.
And yet the way that you do it, and while that dice mechanism is really cool, man, I have to explain it so many times. Okay, first of all, like during the reset phase, you reset the dice to where they are. If you get a cube, you stick it in, which pushes the dice up. Then you can boost dice, which means you can move them farther, and then they change their numbers. And when you decrease the number, it's a number of time, and it's... My biggest concern with Mythic Mischief is I think the audience for this is tremendously smaller than most games we talk about.
Right.
Did you use I'm sorry. Did they use the player aid?
Yeah, but I'm telling you, it doesn't matter about the player. I'm saying it's not an intuitive process. The whole spending cubes, I got it right away.
Yeah.
It's definitely a very gamery game. You know, I would not consider this a welcoming game at all. Like, this is not something that I would throw on like somebody new in the hobby and be like, oh, these interesting abstract the way the different dice work and stuff like that is going to be hard to grasp, like you said, for new people. But if you're like hardcore in gaming and you do that all the time, this is a very interesting, like, deterministic puzzler for people.
It's very procedural, right? I think that's kind of what it's like. The Tomekeeper's moving on a pretty much, generally speaking, where they're going to end up at the end of the turn. You can move walls and such, or bookcases around to kind of affect that, but it's very much a procedure. Okay, I know that they're going to be there, so now this is every turn is a puzzle. How do I get my opponents in the path of the Tomekeeper? Okay, now once I've done that, I've got to go through this step-by-step process. And I do agree with you. I think that the kind of the whatever the phase is called where you reset things is not the most intuitive. I can see that would be a struggle teaching it to new players. And I also do have similar concerns that I think people that are attracted to this game because of the theme, because of the look of it, you look on the back and you see all these kind of whimsical pieces.
Right.
This is a head-down, brain-burny puzzler, 100%.
You know what this is? It's a reincarnation of sorts of Dungeon Twister, in many ways. And it's in a category of, I don't know what category this is, like Chaotic Dungeon, Wiz War.
Right.
But unlike Wiz War,
this is way more deterministic.
This is completely deterministic, which has the one flaw that I think the game has, and if flaw is not the wrong word, it's not a flaw, but problem is analysis paralysis.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
I have definitely played many times where people said, I'm going to do this, and this, and this, and... And I'm like, oh, we already moved all the pieces.
And then trusting that they get it back. It's really hard to undo.
But have you ever done that where you're like, oh, actually what I meant to do was turn this wall first.
Right, because you end up seeing this amazing move. If I had only, oh my gosh, now I see I could have done this. Well, you're 4 moves ahead. You're 4.
Yeah, but I've also seen people undo it, then okay. Oh, I guess I can't do that.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that clutter is there.
And that happens a lot. I'm not talking about a few times.
It does happen, yeah.
Right.
So, any other big thoughts we want to talk about before we get to our final thoughts?
It's better with 4, in my opinion.
Really?
I played the 2 versus 2 version of this, and I find that to be more fun, mostly because it gets looser.
Okay.
Your people are going to get hit way more often because you're not going out of the time. You're kind of crisscrossing in each other's areas.
Sure.
And because of that, it makes the game a little less analytical, and I found it to be more fun. And don't get me wrong, I know you can have fun doing
it's a different
strategic
type of
moves.
Experience.
But I just thought it was better at 4.
Interesting. Okay.
You played it solo?
And
I played it solo, and I think it's fantastic solo, honestly. I think it's very good solo. I did a playthrough on the channel. So
you did
can
better
check that
solo
out.
than against one of us cretins?
Let me put it to you this way. I think it's better solo than against somebody who does not like this type of game. I think you're right. This has...
Well, no kidding.
Tom,
Which is a sliver.
this has a little bit more of a narrow, I think, appeal. For the people that like it, and I'm one of them, I think it's going to be a game that has a lot of appeal. But for people that don't particularly like those head down,
Oh, I agree on that.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
And so I'd rather play it alone than against somebody who is expecting some kind of wacky random game and then they get something very different.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, final thoughts? Any other thoughts before we get to our final thoughts?
We are at final.
All right, Roy, what do you think?
All right.
All right, for me, this is going to be an 8. I really enjoy like the different powers you have and exploring those powers and trying to figure out how to best utilize those things. I like being able to teleport with the wizards and the zombies and things like that. It's really cool to figure all that stuff out. It's very much, like you said, it's a head-down puzzling game where you have to figure out exactly what you want to do. But if you're in the mood for that sort of thing where you're just going up against one person trying to outthink the other player, it's a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it.
All right, I'm close. I'm a 7.5. I like this a lot, but again, with those caveats in place. And even for me, even though I like these very strategic games, sometimes I do want to do some more wacky things. And in this game, sometimes you can get to a spot where I'm like, oh, my next turn I really can't do anything. I'm also not, and don't hate at me, I'm not 100% sure the factions feel as balanced as they could be. I feel like the wizards are better than the zombies, but all right, I don't know. But they're at least easier to play. But I enjoy it. It's a fun game. It's never going to be one of my favorites, I think, because it's hampered by the fact that I'm going to have a hard time finding opponents for it. And they also have to be in the right mood. And sometimes I want to talk while we're playing a game. You're not going to do a lot of talking while playing this.
Gotcha.
But it is still very good, and production off the charts. I like it.
All right, well, I'm going to come in at a 7, so a little bit lower on this one. And I think this was a hard one to rate because for me personally, like my personal enjoyment, it's got to be a very specific place. It's got to be with, like you said, somebody who likes to play, who likes these kind of games, but also who isn't going to get stuck in AP in a quiet environment where I can put my head down and think, you can see we're getting to like one very specific situation which I'm going to enjoy this play, right? And so I think for me, it would be one to really be very situational that I would enjoy this game. But there are other people that I would be like, I 100% recommend this game to you. I can think of one friend where it's like, I want to call her right now and be like, hey, you're going to love this game. This game was made for you, kind of thing. So for the right person, it would be a lot higher. For me, it is a little too abstract. At the after lunch part where you do get that special ability, you finally start to feel like, okay, yeah, maybe I can open this up a little bit and get into the theme. But other than that, I think when your head is down in your game, it feels like an abstract. And you almost have to like take yourself out of that to be like, oh yeah, this is a fun theme. So a little bit too abstract, a little bit too like head down, head to head, out tactic maneuver with a really cool theme, So in the right situation, I would very much enjoy this, but I think that's way too narrow of an opportunity for me to go much higher. So I'm going to say a 7.
As a side note,
Yes.
theme-wise, I am with this Tomekeeper.
Yeah.
These kids are all annoying.
They're very they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
You jerks.
Rearranging
That's
the
right.
shelves?
Yeah.
I like the punks.
You kids. So I'm doing a little bit of a philosophical thing where I am rating this under its ideal circumstances. I'm giving it an 8.5 because to me, I think this is an excellent game when played solo or with somebody that really likes this type of head-to-head battler. Now, I have not actually played it 4. I need to put that out
be
there.
interesting.
I'm interested to try it that way. I've played it head-to-head.
I wonder if you'd
and
like
I've played
it less
solo.
that way.
Potentially. I'll say it's based off of how I've played it head-to-head, and I've played it solo. And I've played it head-to-head with somebody that wasn't as much into it and somebody that was really into it. And it was an amazing experience for the person that was really into it. Not as much for the one that was not. But this is my type of game. I really like kind of puzzly games, abstracts that have a nice theme. I know that you say you can't have both. I don't know. I think it just depends on how you...
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's
I'm being pedantic.
Yeah, it works for me, is what I'm saying. I think this is an excellent game, and one that I really do feel like stands alone, and maybe to some extent to its detriment, because like you said, I don't think it's going to have a very wide appeal. But if it sounds like it appeals to you, it probably does. And if it sounds like it doesn't, it probably doesn't.
Right.
There you go.
I think it will be very
Makes sense.
split like that.
Words of
Very
wisdom.
Yes or no
There you
kind
go.
of thing. Yeah.
All right, well, that is Mythic Mischief. Until next time, I'm Mike DiLisio.
I'm Camilla Cleghorn.
I'm Tom Vasel.
And I'm Roy Cannaday.
Have fun going to the library during the designated library hours and only reading the books that you're allowed to when you're allowed to. Don't get in the way of the Tomekeeper.
Give me all the books.